Welcome everyone to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and on Tuesdays we virtually hang out in Tim Rathbone's living room, and we are having a special show tonight. We are joined by Megan Connor, who often joins us anyway, and but we did a show where Megan said, "No problem, I'm going to be back from Arizona." And let's do a show last a week ago Sunday, and she got delayed at the airport. Was it a standard delay, or was it anything else going on, Megan?
They did the typical vagaries that they do when there's a delay. They said, we have some kind of a mechanical problem. It shouldn't be an issue. We should be getting it fixed right away. And then, it was like an hour and a half. So
Yeah.
who knows what was really going on?
Yeah, and you never know. Is the engine about to fall out, or do they not have enough barf bags on, and they need to wait for their shipment?
Yeah, who knows?
I'll run this comment, and that shows what was happening. And here was my response. So anyhow, we wanted to do a show where we people can ask mostly Megan questions because a week ago it was more in the news that Lori Vallow was convicted, right? The jury came through and did what they were supposed to do. They followed the law, and they got the right thing going. So, Megan, you did a show today about the trial, and it almost has like 10,000 views. So people must be still interested, I'm guessing.
Well, what's really funny is that the videos that I posted today are not new, except for the one that I posted where it was closing statements. And I know that people have been sick of hearing Lori's baby voice. And so I muted her and I read the transcript of her closing statement so that people didn't have to listen to her do her closing statement. So that's the only one that was new. The other things were just things that I clipped out of the trial because my sister, who I'm very close with, she wanted to know what was going on, but she didn't want to watch the entire trial. And I said, well, if you just watch opening statements, closing arguments, and Brandon's testimony, then that's really all you need from the trial. You're going to get all the information that you need just from those things. So I made those videos for my sister, and I guess what people appreciated is not having to listen to Lori's voice.
Megan, you hear a baby voice. I hear a phone sex voice.
Some people have called it her Marilyn Monroe, Mr. President voice.
Exactly.
God.
No objection, Your Honor.
Can you imagine being your cellmate?
Is that correct? Is that correct? Is that correct?
I think, yeah, I have caught myself a couple of times in interviews since then asking that same exact question, and then I'm like, get out of my head. It's really hard to get out of that habit. So
I was kind of hoping maybe you could do the show tonight with that voice.
Do we know if she's getting shipped back to Idaho now?
So she is going to be sentenced in Arizona on the 25th of July, not tomorrow, but the 25th of July. And then I believe that Idaho has up to 30 days to arrange for her transportation back. I know she's anxious to get back to Idaho because she does not like it in Arizona. The prison in Idaho is much cushier than the jail in Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
So
not many women in prison in Idaho.
It's probably cooler too.
Yeah, I mean it's a women's prison. It's federal prison in Idaho. So when you're in prison and jail are two different things. When you're in prison, you're afforded, lots of different privileges, like you have access to a library. You have more time where you can be outside. when she's in Arizona, she really is in her little pod for about 23 hours a day. They let her outside for an hour and when she gets to shower and everything, but that's it. So yeah, it's not a cushy place for her. She much prefers Idaho.
Wow. Wow.
I didn't realize she was in a federal prison now.
So, Megan, tell us about what your new True Crime Tuesday is going to be.
Yeah, so it should have been today, but life got in the way. So we're going to have True Crime Tuesday on Wednesday, where I'm going to do an episode about the Megan Jackson trial in South Carolina, which is another incredibly manipulative woman who created a very similar situation to Lori, where she made up a bunch of lies about her ex, and then she co-opted her current partner to help dispose of the body after she shot him. It was a really terrible situation. And her, unfortunately, one of her daughters had to testify against her in court, which was horrible to watch. But that's what I'm covering. My episode is going to be tomorrow.
What was her name, Megan?
Megan Jackson.
Megan, Mrs. Jackson, if you please.
Yeah, Miss Jackson, if you're nasty.
And why do you think we will never hear from Lori Vallow again? What's the deal with the Idaho prison rules?
Well, Idaho doesn't allow interviews. However, I don't think we're going to stop hearing from Lori. She's going to keep filing motions in Arizona until they make her stop, until they shut her up. Like, she's going to just keep abusing the legal system as much as she can. She just, like, her attorneys just filed an appeal in Idaho, so she'll have that whole appeals process, and I'm sure she's going to continue to file motions in Arizona until they shut her up.
There you go.
So she still has attorneys in Idaho?
Yeah, so in Idaho, she's not representing herself. She's been appointed counsel there because she's considered indigent, and so she's entitled to have counsel provided to her. So her attorneys in Idaho are filing appeals as they, as people always do when there's a life without parole or death penalty case.
So what happens
That
if
would be
they?
far less interesting.
What happens
Sorry.
if Arizona gives her the death penalty?
She's not. The death penalty is not on the table in Arizona.
Oh, okay.
The
Okay.
maximum sentence she can get there is life without parole. But prosecutor Trina Kay said, there were some failings in Idaho. They got the death penalty removed in Idaho because they failed to file some discovery timely. And so Trina Kay said, I don't know what's going to happen in Idaho. If she gets something overturned down there, I want to make sure that she dies here, is what Trina Kay
Okay.
said.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know, was it something that they could have redone everything and reset the clock and then redone everything right? And then, or would that have been like double jeopardy or something like that?
No, the prosecution missed a filing deadline for some discovery. And because they were late with the discovery, it basically, the defense said, well, we don't have time to prepare for this, and so we need to remove the death penalty. And they were awarded that by Judge Boyce.
What she needs is one more life sentence.
Well, she's never going to leave prison. Let's put it that way. I mean, she's got 3 consecutive life sentences in Idaho. Most likely she's going to get life without parole in Arizona. So if by some miracle something gets overturned or appealed or something like that, she's just never going to leave prison. And that's a good thing.
So they held off on sentencing. They're going to sentence her. She was guilty twice in Arizona, right?
Yeah, so she was she was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder of Charles Vallow and conspiracy for attempted murder for Brandon Boudreaux. And they're going to sentence her at the same time for both of those crimes.
What's interesting is I've been reading Visions of Glory, and I'm about halfway through, and I have absolutely no desire to kill anyone yet.
That's weird.
I'm not sure when that happens.
I think you have to
Give
wait
it a
till the
week.
end.
Give it a week.
Yeah, give it another couple chapters, Randy. I'm sure you're going to be on board.
And you have to start a study group.
Wait till the
I'm
end.
sorry. How tough your narcissistic and psychopathic.
So we want to remind everybody that this is a Ask Us Anything. So if you want to know how long Diamond Dave has been growing his beard, if it was since childhood or was it more of a recent thing, like how many years Randy spent in Disney Corporation, something like that would be good. If you wanted to ask Megan what fun things she did in Arizona when she wasn't in the courtroom, or if there's other things.
Or how Gene keeps his colors looking so fresh and clean.
That's right.
Right?
It's
Down
vinegar.
and fresh.
Vinegar is my, what do you call it? Conditioner.
You're like fresh as a midsummer's eve.
Yeah.
Alternatively, Gene just might not wash his clothes at all, and that's why the colors are still there.
That's an option.
Stay bright.
It depends on what shirt it is. Some shirts I do stretch out my wearability, we'll say.
That's a life hack right there. Don't wash your clothes, they never fade. If you don't wash them. It's right there.
So here's
Gene, do you make your shirts? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. You go right ahead, Song.
I was going to ask Gene if he makes his own tie-dyes.
I do not. My mom made some tie-dyes in the 1960s. It smelled everything up. She didn't do a very good job, and I've been afraid to do it on my own. My wife's uncle was a ponytailed engineer for the San Francisco rails, and he passed away and more than 10 years ago, and I inherited his shirts. And he had Grateful Dead tie-dye shirts and a really cool set. And so I started wearing them because I'm thrifty, and I sort of like to be colorful because otherwise life can be drab. And so it's my way of just adding something to life. So Deborah says, what are some of your upcoming projects? There's going to be a super huge announcement. It'll probably be on the cover of the New York Times or something if Randy gets his way. But Randy, Megan, and I are working on a project that maybe we'll talk about other ways. That's right, fabric softener, not conditioner.
Blessed be the fruit.
Randy or Gene, you look so much like the man that wearing tie-dye. Kind of let people know you're kind of chill, you know?
You mean the dude?
No, just like the man, like you look like a cop kind of deal, you know? So wearing tie-dye lets everyone know you're not a fuzz.
Well, if I wasn't wearing tie-dye, I would look like a prison
the man.
guard.
Yeah.
Well, I just want y'all to know that I am diligently watching The Handmaid's Tale, Tim, especially you. And I feel like I'm on a roller coaster because just when I think something really good is going to happen for the star of the show, because I don't want to give anything away, just when I think something good's going to happen, bam, right back in the gutter. It's taking its toll on my health.
It does that, yes.
Oh my gosh.
And it. So the last episode, when I watched the finale, I went, "Oh my God, not again."
Here's a good question for Megan on the screen.
Susie says, hi, all. Megan, have you been following Colby's channel of him watching the Idaho trial? No, I have not. I know that Colby has made the decision to rewatch both Lori's trial from 2023 and Chad's trial from 2024. And I think that's good for him. You know, I felt the same way. I wanted to hear all of the evidence that came in, but it's not something I want to rewatch. I think it'll be good for him. I'm glad he's doing that on his channel. I'm glad that he's got the support that he has over there, but that's not something I want to do. I've already watched both of those trials and I'm done.
So I also want to remind everybody that I promised Megan that I would double the super chats up to $200. And so part of this was to cover some of Megan's expenses for going to Arizona and watching Lori Vallow so that we didn't have to. And so we thank her for that. And then and you're going back for the penalty phase or whatever they call it.
Yeah, I will be going back for the sentencing. It's just one day. It's a one-day hearing. It's scheduled for July 25th from 9 to noon Phoenix time. So I probably will fly in the night before and probably fly out the day after that and spend a little time with some family members and stuff.
Maybe eating a little Mexican food.
You know, I don't know. I didn't get a lot of time to. I got to enjoy a few restaurants while I was in Phoenix, but it's hard for me to want to get Mexican food outside of Texas. It's just so good here.
For a minute, it sounded like you think that Texas Mexican food is better than Arizona Mexican food.
Yes, I do. 100%.
I'm going to fly to Arizona next time you're there and take you to a Mexican restaurant that'll make your tongue slap your brains out.
All right. Game on.
Well, Tex-Mex is kind of its own
Okay.
thing. It's not really Mexican food.
That's true. It's not true Mexican
Tex.
food. I've actually had Mexican food in Mexico too. And so, yes, that's true. Tex-Mex is not the same.
It's like
Mexican
Taco
food in
Bell.
Mexico sucks.
Somebody wants to know why Songs is called Songs. Songs, you can do a little short story about that. Just let's keep it
Yeah.
under 30 minutes. I'm just kidding.
Okay. I will keep it probably under 30 seconds. I don't like using my name because, you know, I work in a job and stuff like that. So, I used a line from a song by the Grateful Dead. And the line in the song is sometimes we listen to songs of our own. So my handle is Songs of Our Own. And that's just what I use because it's a group I love and a song I like.
Very cool.
Almost like marching to the beat of a different drum.
I think it's great.
Right.
I like it.
We all have our own things going on. Let's see. So there's people can have questions for Tim, Randy. Randy and Megan did a show the other day. What was that show about?
It was called Good Grief.
Good grief.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It was you know what? I did too. It was great. And I've had a lot of positive feedback from that show.
Yes, all the comments are positive. People love Randy and his perspective. And, you know, I think, Randy, you sharing your stories of grief, you know, gives permission for other people to tell their stories too. And that's what I saw a lot of in the comments, people sharing as well. And I think it's important to acknowledge that grief comes to us all. And it's an important part of life.
I always give people who are grieving C.S. Lewis's book, A Grief Observed, which to me is that's the best book I read on grief.
I mean, besides Randy's.
A Grief Observed. A Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis.
Oh,
We have two Australians watching. Shelley Patour
Awesome.
right there in the bottom. And
Nice gentleman.
Peter Higgs says, good day.
Good day, Peter.
Yo.
And
Good day,
Randy
Peter.
and I interviewed Shelley yesterday, and we're going to put that show out later this week. So that's something to look forward to.
Trevor, where do you live? You've been showing up everywhere on all these podcasts.
I live in Eagle Mountain now. Eagle Mountain, Utah. Sorry, to be more specific.
People don't know where Eagle Mountain is, just like
It's like
On the top of Lake Utah.
yeah, it's like the northwest of Utah Lake. So it's like across the lake from Provo. It's south of Salt Lake, like maybe like 45 minutes from Salt Lake.
Kinder Kim, I'm reading your question, and I want you to know that it's always been incredibly regulated. Only now we do it electronically. But if you go into the basement of the big, large, scary funeral home that I worked at in Spokane, Washington, Tim, you were about to say something there.
it's because of you. I watched that on Max last week after our show. I watched all 3 hours of that show.
The
The funeral director.
Yeah, that's pretty gross, huh?
Pretty bad.
But they, if you go into the basement of some of these funeral homes, or some of them have storage areas, the number of books they have dating back into the early 20s is just absolutely unbelievable. We had stacks and stacks and stacks of books, and I don't think anyone will ever go through them. I would from time to time, just because it's interesting. But they've always had to keep meticulous care because they don't want the wrong decedent going into the wrong grave or into the wrong hands of the loved ones. So, yeah, it's always been meticulous, but now with the advent of computers, it is so so precise. That's a big thing.
For tens of thousands of years, we just buried the body because the guy stopped moving. He started stinking, and so we buried it, right? And now there's all complicated paperwork and regulations on it. Anyway, Shelley has a question too.
You know, Shelley, that's up to you. How long will you feel grief after leaving the church and your family? That is going to be up to you and your relationship with the church and your family and the boundaries that you set. Some people say that it turns into happiness and freedom. And thank you, Lou. Thank you for your kind comment. I hope only that it can help you, because that's the whole reason for writing the book, was to help others overcome their horrible pain of grief. I will admit it's the most pain I've ever been in my life. And
Oh yeah,
I could
definitely.
experience it again any day. And I try to warn my loved ones, I hope they're going to experience a lot of pain when I kick the bucket. I'm a lot closer than, you know, the rest of my family. But I warn them, it's like, hey, love me now, be sweet to me now, so you don't have any regrets. It's, you know what, my biggest piece of advice is your loved ones, always tell them you love them like it's the last time you'll ever see them, because it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as timing and grief goes, you know, it takes the amount of time that it takes, and don't ever let someone tell you that you should be over it already, because, you know, grief comes in waves and it comes in stages, and I don't think we're ever completely finished with the grieving process. I don't believe in closure. I think that grief comes to us from time to time to remind us of what we love and what was important to us. And, you know, I'm often caught off guard when I feel grief in a moment when I don't expect it. But I'm always grateful for it because it reminds me how much I care about the people that I love in my life.
Amen.
Yeah, it's
People
like
also
landmines.
experience grief differently too, so just go at your pace, because I mean, grief is kind of its own process for everybody. People experience it differently, so your grief isn't going to be, you could have like two people with the exact same situation, but they're going to grieve differently in different ways for different lengths of time too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I kind of feel like my grief was robbed from me by being a Mormon. because why grieve for somebody who's in a better place?
Okay.
Why grieve for somebody you're going to see in a little while anyway? Once our short period on this earth is over, we're going to be with them for billions of years in mansions in the sky, and everything's going to be good, just as long as you pay your tithing. And so that's the only thing I grieved, is when I didn't pay tithing enough. Maybe like, did I pay enough tithing to go to see my mother again? I don't know,
Kinder
But yeah, I don't know
Kim,
what my authentic grieving would be.
Kinder Kim says that her grief just lasts and lasts. Grief doesn't go away; it just gets further away. And those landmines that you were talking about, Megan, that you may step on and suddenly the grief is back. They lose a lot of their power over time. But
Yeah.
grief doesn't completely go away. Grief can turn into longing and can turn into loving memories, but it doesn't go away. I lost my wife, but I have a new love now, and I know that my late wife sent me my Amanda, and I'm so thankful to my late wife, and I will always love her for that, because she knew what I needed here on the earth.
Yeah.
So here's a good question, and I'm going to start off with Randy, and but I wanted to do this first. This is Randy's book, Feeling Empty. Got his heart was empty, but if you fill it with something, you'll figure out how to survive your grief. And then
Thank you, Jane. It's, that book is for those whose partners or loved ones have left them for death, and for those whose partners or loved ones still may. So it's for everyone, actually. We're all going to experience it at one time or another.
that's right. Diamond Dave, introduce yourself. How would you introduce yourself to people?
I'm just here. No, yeah, I'm Diamond Dave. I live in Mongolia now. Don't really know what to say.
I would say that you're
I
someone.
do way too much. I do way too much. I have way too many followers.
If I didn't know,
to
if I
keep up with.
didn't know it was true, and I heard you say you're Mongolia, I'd be like, that dude's totally lying.
What'd you say?
Just because it's like hearing that you're from Mongolia, like I would just think that's a lie if I didn't know it was true.
Oh no, I'm
Just
not
'cause it's
from
so like
Mongolia.
specific.
I
No,
live in
like that
Mongolia.
you're there, yeah. Like just because it's so
Oh.
specific, and you're like obviously a white dude, I would just be like, what?
Well, yeah, being white means nothing. I've lived in
Yeah,
India.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I've been to Peru. It doesn't
For sure.
mean anything.
Yeah.
We
I
invite
live in
Diamond Dave
Mongolia.
on because he has a youthful approach and a different. Since he grew up with Hindu, basically, right? Would you say that, Diamond?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, it's reasonably.
And then you had a period in your life where you were addicted to drugs, and you found a way to pull yourself out of the gutter and better your life. And part of that joining the Mormon Church.
No, actually, I had been
done that
clean
first?
and sober. Was it 2011, 2012? So maybe about 8 years at that point, roughly.
Congrats on that, Diamond Dave. That is very admirable.
Big deal.
Celebrated every day.
And Diamond Dave was an adult recruit to the Mormon Church, and we kind of wanted his perspective, and we're glad that he was able to give us that in a lot of our shows, of somebody who grew up normal, we'll say, because I don't consider my growing up normal at all right now, and he has different perspective on things. Megan, how would you introduce yourself to my audience more?
I am a mother of 6 spectacular human beings. I'm a grandmother to 2 little princes. I'm an author. I'm a podcaster. I'm a coach. And what I love more than anything else is connecting with other beautiful human beings, hearing your stories, and hearing how my experiences can help other people to mitigate and avoid pain in their lives.
And right now we have at least 5 states and 2 countries represented, I think. I'm Gene Judson. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, enjoyed my life as a youth. On one hand, we did a lot of activities. On the other hand, I was guilted for being a normal boy, we'll say, and got married. I have 4 children and 6 grandchildren, and started a podcast to try to help shine a light on creators that maybe wouldn't get as much publicity, we'll say, but we celebrate creativity, and it's our stories that we present are more about the creator's journey, hoping to give some inspiration to our audience, and also to give people permission to start thinking for themselves, because if other people can have a thought and express it and then go write a book or do a podcast, which is really scary at first, right? Then that shows some bravery. It sets an example of somebody taking back control of their lives and being in charge, self-sovereignty, being in charge of themselves.
Thank you, Gene, for doing what you do, because I'm one of those that you got started in this world, and I'd just be kicking back in my easy chair, sipping on soda and reading magazines if you hadn't come along.
And collecting pennies a day from royalties, right?
How do you guys know each other, Gene and Randy?
So, because I scour Facebook for people that have common friends with me, I clicked on Randy's profile, and it said that he was an author. I was like, I've interviewed some authors. Maybe I'll have him on the show. And so we interviewed Randy, talked about his book, and then I thought, just like every time during the show, Randy said like 4 or 5 things, right? That's like, wow, that would be another good show. Like his Disney experience, right?
Yeah, I've heard him. I agree.
And then when we brought him to Tuesdays with Tim, he says stuff, you just never know what's going to come out of Randy Watts' mouth, because he might say, I was vice president of the United States once, because whoever knows who the vice presidents were, right? He could have been. You never know. But he always says something that's just a little extra. And when we were doing a post-show chat, because sometimes our chats after the show go longer than when we were chatting on the show. We kind of like each other. And Randy said that he went on a date with Lori Vallow once. And Megan was like, what? And so that was another beginning. And so that
was a bombshell that he literally dropped in the last 30 seconds of a panel that we'd been on the panel for like an hour and a half. And in the last 30 seconds, he was like, by the way.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I'll tell you about it in the after show. And the whole audience was like, what?
What?
You can't just drop that and then leave.
It would have been crazier if he was the one dating Lori, though.
Well, thank goodness he wasn't, because he might not be alive.
Right. It showed a lot about Lori, because her date was her brother. So that is it was an interesting twist that Megan thought, that is interesting.
Yeah, it was a double date.
The layers to that.
I love that Salt and Pepper talks about me sipping on my delicious peanut butter coffee. Oh, hey, Deb.
Hey, Deb.
I joined.
Hi, Deb.
Yay.
There she is.
You made it.
Tim, introduce yourself to the audience without saying
Already.
I am Tim Rathbone. I grew up in Los Angeles. I lived in Colorado. I went on a mission to Germany. I lived in Utah and back to California. I have 4 children, 1 daughter, and 3 sons. And right now I live in Bakersfield, California.
And how many cats?
Well, I have 2. Now, we have 17 in the house, but
Oh my God.
only
Whoa.
2. I know.
I
Well,
had no idea it was that many.
that's why I had to get the mail fixed because he got mommy pregnant again. I found a couple weeks ago, I found 2 kittens we didn't know we had.
Oh my God.
So,
Too bad my grandpa Dan.
Oh, wow.
You need
But,
to
but
teach.
Tim, you are a historian and an author, and you have extensive research. You've done extensive research
I
about.
don't know anything. I don't know anything.
And
Yes,
to
I've done
me,
a lot of
the main
research.
thing about Tim is that he loaned his temple recommend to somebody who recorded the temple ceremony, and then it was published by the Tanners. Is that
Nice.
correct?
That is correct. In 1990,
Wow.
after April 1990, I
Jealous.
sent my recommend to a friend, and they went to the Washington, D.C. temple, and they recorded the endowment, and they typed it up and sent it to Gerald and Sandra Tanner.
How long do you think it's going to be before the Mormon Church gets wise and starts putting people's pictures on the temple recommend? I mean, the
It's
thing
crazy
is
they
that
don't do it already.
Well, now, aren't they good for 2 years now? I
they're good for
understand.
2 years. And one of the things is that we can count on is that the Mormon Church is so cheap that they don't want to do that because they know it would be way too expensive.
Or they
pictures.
could. Does the membership record have a picture of the person?
I don't think it
No.
does.
Well,
So
everything's
that would be
already
the
been
next
filmed.
step. The next step would be take a picture of everybody in the ward and put it on
They
the
already do that
website.
though.
And then they could tie their recommend to
Well,
their photograph. So they
you
went
can-
to the temple and they'd swipe their temple recommend and the picture would come up.
You
And
can voluntarily put your picture on LDS Tools on the app if you want to, but let me tell you, like right now, Costco has tighter security than the freaking temple does.
Right?
Like they've got your picture on the card, they make you scan it when you come through the door, and
really,
then yes, and then they
Yeah.
will not
Wow.
allow you to pay for anything unless you scan your card. I actually was in a Costco with my oldest daughter. We had a cart full of stuff that each of us, we were both buying stuff. And, I got up there and I was paying for some things. And then she said, oh, these are mainly for my family, my kids. Why don't I pay for these? And I was like, okay, that's fine if you really want to. And the cashier said, I'm sorry, but do you have a Costco card? I need to scan your card if you're going to pay for anything. So, it's like I have to stand in line to get into Costco because I have to scan my membership. I have to stand in line to get out of Costco because I have to check my receipt. It's ridiculous. But the Mormon Church, you could go into the temple with somebody else's recommend. And as long as the barcode is active, you're good.
Okay, I've been to Costco for a couple of years and somebody's
Costco makes all their money on the memberships. They kind of just break even on the food and stuff.
Right.
And so I used to work there, and they would talk about like kind of when you're getting hired, like they had like the soda fountain, And they would talk about like there's a guy who worked here for like 30 years, and then he went and took a soda without paying for it, and so we had to fire him.
What?
Like
Wow.
yeah, like it's like they're just like kind of crazy like that.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Costco's changed since I've been in there. It's been a couple of years. Well, that must be in the past year or two because
it's within the last year. They've really started cracking down on that, and it's kind of annoying.
They
It's
sell
a cult.
caskets.
They do. They sell caskets, but you have to buy them in packs of 2.
What?
I'm kidding. That's a joke. It's not real.
Good.
That was a good Costco joke.
That
Well,
was
Kinder Kim is interested in Tim's extensive research into the history of the church.
Okay.
Should we do a future episode?
I guess we could, but it just boils down to I worked in the archives at BYU, and for 2 days a week, sometimes 1 day a week, I would go up to the church archives and do research up there.
In Salt Lake City.
In Salt Lake, yeah, because I was a research assistant to the Dennis Rowley, who was the manager of the archives. I was his research assistant, and I'd go up there and do research, and I'd do process collections and microfilm collections in the BYU archives, and then I'd go up there to do research for him and another professor I worked for. And then when they got another job, I worked for Don Cannon and Bill Hartley doing their research for them. And so I go up to the archives a couple of days a week and do research. And I had a huge collection, but it's now all gone.
Is there anything that you've researched that hasn't been disclosed? Because now we've had like all these disclosures lately from the LDS Church saying, "Oh, we're gonna admit
Yeah,
to the."
there is. Well, something that I was researching was the sex house up Parley's Canyon or somewhere.
That's real.
There's supposed to be a house up there that Hinckley went to. Hinckley supposedly there's a videotape on YouTube that talks about this, that Hinckley liked little boys, something, and there was a house up in the canyon. I heard about it. I did some research on it. Somebody years ago posted the deed to the property on the internet. I had a copy of that. I did more research on that. That I talked to Sandra about it and Gerald, and they said, as far as they knew, they couldn't find anything out about it. I still think that's a thing. I still believe that that they do things up there somewhere.
Very believable with the whole second anointing thing. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They specifically don't say like sex sin, so it's like obviously you're going to do that if you can.
Right.
And you have a lot of money, you're not very attractive, it's a bad situation.
So I wish somebody would break that wide open, but I started researching it back in the 80s when I found out about it. And
Interesting.
Here
Because I was in escrow, and so I did a deep dive when a friend told me that Sherry Dew and what's Monson's wife, Wendy, owned a house in
right.
Heber. And they absolutely did. And then I found out that when they married, Wendy and Rusty, they went to Rusty's marital home, and Sherry actually had a house next door to Rusty. And the chain of title said that that house that Sherry might have owned privately was then transferred into an LDS holding, meaning it was tax exempt. And I thought that was super fascinating. And this was 10 years ago. So I think the chain of title is there, but if it transfers, and also to search title, you have to have a specific address. You can't just like rando search, so you have to have some inside information on where the property is, or because if the name is changed, you won't be able to search the property. So that's probably why, especially if you were researching the title on that property. Now everything's digital, so you can look online, and I've shown some people like my findings and title, just researching some stuff. But if you know how to specifically look for it, you can find it, but it really takes a title person. It's a skill to know how to find that. And don't make me do that, Tim. I might find some stuff.
Well, I wish I
you're
could.
a freaking sleuth.
I wish I could find the document.
What happened to all your research, Tim? Did you have to get rid of it?
No, I had a storage unit that somebody was supposed to pay the rent on, and they did not. So I lost my storage unit.
So was it up Parley's Canyon, or did it go up Immigration? Because Immigration Canyon, if you come from Salt Lake,
I don't remember.
Parley's,
it's been too long. It's been too long. It's either one of those two. I don't remember exactly. Find the video on YouTube and listen to it. he gives some
Oh.
clues in there.
Well, no, that's what what's his face brought up in the videos he made. The Tanners didn't like the anti-Mormon guy. That oh, I think the name now. They call
We
it
take it talking about not
Decker?
Schnurbeling, Ed Decker, and
yeah. Tim's on it. Yeah, they talked about the Hinckley thing there, and the Tanners I know said like they were against that because it was obviously like you said.
And we're still
yeah,
introducing people.
yeah, we're showing.
We're trying to
Anyway,
get to Trevor, I think, right? Trevor's next.
I'm just some dude that clicked on the link Gene posted.
So, and here's what I'll say. I interviewed Tim because Tim would show up here and there. And so I thought, Tim, let's do a show. And Tim broke the news of who he lent his
no, I've never.
because he
I have
got
never.
permission
Yes.
and he had been keeping a secret. He would rather suffer his life to be taken than tell somebody who he did that with.
People
And
know who did
I've
it.
interviewed Songs of Our Own. And so but I thought Tim needed a show like this where Tim, Tim and I are old and we make fun of Tim that, he was there when fire was discovered and stuff like that. But when you get old, your mind is kind of cobwebby. And I thought it might take a year's worth of Tuesdays with Tim to get a few good nuggets out of Tim's brain. So here we are.
And Gene, you're so much older than I am.
I know. And it's Randy's birthday tomorrow. So if anybody wants to give
Happy birthday, Randy.
If anybody
you.
wants to thank Randy for his contribution to Megan's show or my show, you can do it in the super chat, or you can send me money, but just don't tell Randy that you did that.
It's
And
just
so
I'm
I've
enjoying
interviewed-
this day. I'm enjoying this day because tomorrow Gene and I are the same age.
That's right. Right now he has to call me sir, and then tomorrow we're on equal footing again.
Okay.
Tomorrow I'll be calling you son.
Good son. So I interviewed Songs of Our Own, right? Songs, because you're a super fan.
Yeah, I met most everybody here in the chats of like different podcasts because I was deconstructing had been a member of the church up until my 40th birthday a few years back, and I stopped going, and I hadn't really like processed some of the reasons why until I had a relationship that didn't go very well and with somebody who I knew from the church. And so, long story short, I just was in all these podcast chats, and then all these names would come up, and we just, kind of got to know each other, a lot of us through the chats. And so Gene was one of the people, and I didn't realize at the time until later that Gene had his own show he was doing, and so I did an interview there. But I was the other reason for songs is I'm a singer, dancer, actor. I was a theater major in college. Most of my friends went on and started their careers where I, was a Mormon. So I got married and started a family, and I teach. But I do plan to get back to it. I've done some things here and there, but I plan to commit fully to it once my youngest is grown. But yeah, I've got kids and grandkids also. So,
and my recollection songs is that we interviewed you, and then as I was editing it, you thought that maybe you didn't want it to be released. Was it that show?
Yeah. Because
and
of
songs, we waited a couple
job.
months because Songs didn't want to get outed as some radical ex-Mormon at in her true life, and or did it have to do with family and friends at all as well?
It had to do a little with that too, because my mom is still a member. I'm, kind of okay with my place in that now, but at first it was kind of hard because, I was struggling with my relationship with her. Now we've kind of come to a good spot, but none of her kids stayed in the church. She's like the last Black member of our ward. Like everyone else who was baptized, she was the first, and she's the last. Everyone else left.
That sounds like
some of them
podcast title.
Well, it's interesting because some of them went out with a blaze. Like the last family to leave was because of the BYU Hawaii and the hair dreadlocks thing. That was a whole, member of our ward. Yeah. So So we're here in the South. But yeah, and so that was just my affiliation with this group is just I've met most people in the chats of ex-Mormon content. So.
That's right.
Remind
And
us who you teach, Songs.
middle
Huh?
school.
Who do you teach?
Oh, I teach middle school theater arts. So
Great.
Cool.
singing,
That's
dancing,
right.
acting, and all types of theater arts. So.
I
So
want
we're
to
gonna have to
add,
do a show with Songs where we talk about her her experience in theater and stuff like that. So Randy, write that down.
Written. It's
and
in the brain.
I want to add that I'm not just interested in Mormon history. Okay, I broke the news about an aviation program that was planned in the 1980s called Credible Sport, where they took two C-130s and put 30 rockets on them, and they were going to take them from Turkey and land at the soccer stadium across the street from the American Embassy and rescue the hostages. And when I worked for Lockheed, I found out about this and I produced a DVD all about this. And if you go type Credible Sport in YouTube, you'll see a 5-minute video. But I broke the story to the press. It's been on Destroyed in Seconds and a couple other TV shows on History and Discovery Channel. So I don't just do Mormon history, I do aviation and military history also.
You
So that
are
was an
not
example
another
of
pretty face.
the cobwebby stuff in our brains, and we
In our
took
brains.
Tim a little while to come up with those.
Mine
Yeah.
is just international politics and international finance. That's kind of my stick when I'm not in like the Exmo space or hanging out with current members. A lot of finance and a lot of geopolitics internationally.
Because if you follow me on Facebook, I post a lot of airplane and military stuff too. So that's really my first love is aviation. So
What were you saying, Randy? I talked over you.
Oh, I just said Tim is not just another pretty face.
thank you.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of another pretty face, Debbie Donovan I interviewed because Debbie Donovan got, I was going to say backyard professor fired, but it really is. She got backyard professor thinking that maybe he didn't want to be contracted with Bill Reel anymore because Debbie donated some money while RFM was doing a live show. I mean, backyard professor was doing a live show, and backyard professor said, "Hey, I just generated some money for you because other people donated as well." And Bill said, "Well, you know, a contract's a contract." And backyard professor thought, "Well, I'm going to go on my own." Because after Debbie did that, 2 weeks later, backyard professor was on his own. And so I talked to him about it, and he sort of confirmed loosely that's sort of what happened. But Debbie is a super fan, right? She was in the chats everywhere, and I wanted to interview Debbie as a super fan. And
And a home wrecker.
and
Yeah, apparently, like I didn't mean to do that. Also, I've gotten to know Carrie now that he's done his own channel, and yes, people don't like his like extraterrestrial stuff, but I do. But
Yeah.
Carrie is like such a great researcher, and so when he dives into a topic, it's so interesting because he is a professor. Like he is like the true, like he can deliver the way
self-taught.
yeah, I mean the way he like presents his information, and that
Right, you
night
mean
I
when
really
he's
loved what
after
he
he's
was saying.
back from an
Like,
intergalactic journey, when he has time to do a podcast.
Yeah, he's
Gene,
supposed to come on.
there's been a request to put the link in the chat.
The link to everybody's shows that I've
To
done.
StreamYard in the chat.
That means I have to multitask extra. But first, somebody wanted to know, this is a fireplace mantle, and we gave somebody an old saw because he wanted to practice painting. I don't know, maybe I should go full screen on this. And we thought he was just going to paint it and keep it for himself, and then he gave it back to us.
Oh, that's
And so
cool.
this fireplace mantle, I'm in my living room. I started off with sort of an area that I had like a studio, and then my brother got a divorce and needed to move in, and so this is I'm sitting at a card table, just chatting away in the living room. Everybody comes in and out of the house, and I sometimes have to mute as the traffic goes by. But anyhow,
I've seen
I
it
always
live
thought you were in
in
front of a
person.
piano.
Wait, what?
I always thought Gene was in front of a piano.
I did too.
I thought that was
I
like
did
a
too.
piano behind him.
The old upright, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
got that feel to it.
yeah.
I used to live in Paris, and I remember the first time I saw the Mona Lisa, I got the same feeling the first time I went to Jean's house and saw the Saw. It was like I'm seeing this live and in person.
it's like Mecca, huh? It's like touching the stone.
Yep. I was enlightened.
Of course,
You
of
saw
course,
the
Randy
saw.
lived in
That sounds like
Paris.
it would be a song. I saw the saw.
So has Debbie introduced herself yet? Did I
She needs
miss
to
that?
talk more about herself. She's the only Catholic, I think, on the panel.
Yes, I am a Catholic. Because I married a Catholic and I had children with a Catholic, and I felt like his Catholic experience was way different than my Mormon experience. Like, he actually learned stuff. I just learned Mormonism. He actually learned like a great education and had doors open to him, and his whole family's Catholic, and I felt like I didn't want my kids to be Mormon, and that was the biggest fear, was when his mom found out he was dating a Utah Mormon, that she would lose her son. And I was like, oh, hell no, honey, we're good. And so that was just kind of a process. And I've always been curious about Catholicism because, I was raised back in the age of, it was the great white whore of Babylon, that other religion that we now want to embrace. We used to, in my day, objectify as being the root of all evil. So of course, I'm going to go down that road. And I liked the rituals, and I really liked the parish, and it gave like my marriage and that time and our kids something, and it was very bonding to, and my husband's passed, so my late husband, it was definitely important. And I'm Catholic. I have not gone to mass since he's passed. My kids go to a private Catholic school. They're getting a great education, which I'm super happy about. I don't care what it is you believe in. I believe kids should learn to read, write, do math, and like explore that intellectual and creative ability. And I felt like my ability was stifled because, yes, I could cook, I could sew, I could needlepoint, I could make a wreath out of like a rope, like homemaking. Like, I grew up, it was like very much preparing to be that wife. And I felt, after becoming an adult and leaving the church at 29, all those things that were so taboo, like in education, limited me. But I felt too old. And I also then was making money in my career fields because I had kind of broke the mold. But I really, I wish I had been raised in a place where I had all the opportunities and all the ability to express myself either creatively, because I was a ballroom dancer, I rode horses, I played music. I mean, I did all that, but I never was taught to then want to achieve that. That's why like Megan songs are like so amazing, because they were actually like given the gift to even like pursue those gifts. I was just given all the gifts in like little like coin forms. So I'm like a jack of all trades of bullshit. Like I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm never gonna win an award. Okay.
Oh,
So
you could win an award for your private investigative skills. I guarantee you that. You are
Yeah.
a sleuth. If you want to know information about, like dig down deep, Deb is your
yeah.
person.
Plus, Debbie, since she's worked food service and bar attended, she knows a lot of rumors, and we're going to do a show about wards and rumors of wards in Salt Lake City someday, where she's going to give up all the dirt of the tips she's heard about things.
And that's the thing. My dad, I grew up in Utah, kind of, and he worked for Zion's Bank when it was church owned. And he was vice president of public finance. So, like Heber Light and Power, you can thank my dad.
I
But
will.
also with a guy who would give these institutions or approve their loans. And so that's the cool part is I kind of got a different education because my dad's a convert and he went to law school. He went to college with Joe Biden. I mean, I have so many stories, but the cool thing is now bringing those stories full circle because I remember those things as a kid or asking, when you talk to your kids about your life or whatever, they only remember so much or they remember key points. And it's so much fun to talk to my dad now and really do those deep dives into the business of Utah, how it works. And now I'm like, oh, some things haven't changed and they've gotten worse. And that kind of has always been like, I stand on a line with 2 feet on both lines. Or, when you're like, I'm here and I'm there. So, because I come from also on my mother's side, a lot of Mormon polygamy and Mormon hierarchy, very much involved in that. She's on my mother's side, we're related to every freaking Mormon prophet, but 2. I'm like 3rd cousins to Romney, like there's some weird inbreeding. And I didn't understand that as a kid, even going to those like family reunions. But now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, that was weird. And now hearing the church admit, oh yeah, there was polygamy or this happened, this happened, this happened. Those questions that I always had as a kid have been answered. And I'm like, liars, you guys lied to me.
Deb,
Yep.
do you have an
Oh, yeah.
opinion on the new pope?
You know what? He's kind of like a dark horse. I don't yet because he's been laying low. I know the old pope, many Catholics felt was very heretic. Kind of like how, like, if you read current Mormondom or follow active members, even on Twitter or whatever, there are some members that are very critical of Rusty Nelson because in their mind, he's taking away the culture and becoming more mainstream or trying to pander to both sides or play politics, which is never the role of a pope or a prophet. And I feel like Rusty kind of gets the same criticism in that really fundamental, especially because I'm in Utah, space, because they don't like when he embraces any kind of change. Because those in Utah, they're very much old school pioneer Mormons with the racism, the homophobia, the no one gets in unless they're invited kind of mentality.
Well, the
Well,
conservatives.
the new pope seems a little progressive. He seems like he's a little more hip than his predecessors. Like I could see him flying a pride flag outside the what is it? The huge
The
Vatican.
Vatican.
Vatican. Thank you.
And,
St. Peter's
and
Basilica.
for the record, first American Pope, that's unique. So and he's young. He's not like a decrepit, like some of these men have been called like, what's the next Mormon prophet? It's going to be Oakes, like this decrepit old man. This guy is actually young. And I feel like might relate to a Catholic better than like, an octarian, so to speak.
I like
But
him.
I like.
I remember thinking papal was kind of a weird word because it's the Pope, and then it's like papal, and I thought it was kind of like an off-color word, and I didn't know it'd be like online banking someday. PayPal.
Like any pope
Don't
is
start
like
tying threads together.
any pope
Rattle.
with like a European conservative is like a super liberal in America, basically. So almost every pope is pretty liberal compared to conservative America.
Yes.
I have a question. So I think I'm correct in all this. So when everybody introduced themselves, everybody has some type of Mormon background. Trevor, what about you? Are you FLDS also? What's the?
He's President Nelson's grandson, but I wasn't supposed to say that.
Maybe it could be. Yeah, I was born and raised Mormon. Lived in Utah my whole life. But I left when I was 19, and so I've been out as long as I was in now. So.
Did you leave to avoid serving a mission?
No, I could have not gone. I would have been fine. But I just decided I'm either going to go or it's not true. So I just decided it's not true.
And aren't you a moderator?
Go ahead.
Aren't you a moderator for some of the podcasts?
No,
Trevanon is somebody else.
Oh, okay.
Mormon stories.
Okay.
Songs. I thought you said mind reader, and I was like, Trevor.
Well, Trevor, you might be a mind reader. Let's hear your story.
No, I just grew up in Utah, and I've just been doing my thing. Nothing too exciting.
You're being modest, okay.
I haven't done very much.
Good for you. That's success.
That's the good
If
news.
you overachieve in Mormonism, you're going to be sorely disappointed at the end of the day when you go, I gave up what?
Yeah, it seems like I'm young, so I don't have much of that. Like, sunken cost.
I'm really excited to start a show with Gene and Megan, like we talked about. And we are currently looking for the perfect name. And we each put in about 20 ideas. But anyone have any great ideas for a name?
The one that came to my mind when you said that, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
I kind of like that.
Such a great movie.
But is that about who we are, or is that about the church?
Just you guys are like the players of the players. Like you guys can work the system and break the truth. I like it. Hustle the hustlers, so to speak.
And we could abbreviate it DRS, and then everyone thinks we're doctors, but we're actually dirty rotten scoundrels.
Oh, that was good.
Which is what people think of doctors after they get the bill.
I think you're the three Nephites that everybody was looking for.
Very good.
All times and no time and every time.
Deb,
they never die. They never go away. They're just there.
Megan suggested three neophytes.
Ah, yeah. Even better.
That's funnier. What were the top 5? Okay, the neophytes. Gene, what was your favorite?
Since I'm old, almost as old as Tim, I'd have to look at my texts back to Randy. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, we have a list of names. I kind of like one that I came up with: 2 men and a Megan.
How about Mormon three-way?
That'll get flagged by YouTube so
That's why dirty.
fast.
If you have a dirty mind, 3 ways, 3
Menage,
people.
menage.
About soaking made easy.
No, all these are bad. All those are
I mean,
bad.
what
gotta
is
get
what is
attention.
the topic going to be of the thing, and who's your target market?
Please take control of this situation.
I'm never going to pretend to be in control of anything.
So my idea
Megan is not endorsed.
is that we kind of opine about Mormonism in the news. Like Megan Hayes has her, what's her channel? Generally Unquotable, and she does Mormon stories in the news, but she just delivers them with sometimes a little remark about it, right? And then last night was Mormon newscast, and they talk for a really long time about a few articles that they come across. But I thought we would get snippets from those stories and then give our own opinions about them. And Randy wants to make sure that the audience gets a chance to comment on the news, because people can't comment on Megan Hayes' channel or Mormon newscast, live.
Yeah, I'd like it a call-in
A
show.
call-in show.
It's definitely the way to go. Like, I watch all the Mormon discussions, and the calling ones are by far the most entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
You may just want to keep the name more generic, unless you want like a more niche audience.
There you go.
Gee,
What do you got,
Just
Dave?
from a marketing standpoint for the SEO and the like YouTube search algorithm.
So I've thought of like Mormon musings or something like that as a.
can
like
you
we're-
put up our thread? We'll get a little vote going here. Or an opinion. Or is that too top secret?
put up our thread?
About all the names that all three of us suggested.
Expose
here's
our
what I
private
recommend.
messages, Randy.
Well, we're all family, right?
Some of those are not for.
I don't
Some of
know.
those are.
I think
Here's what I recommend you do, Randy. Look at some of them and you put in the comments one at a time some of the names that you thought were good. And I think I put 2 names in. I can't find the thread that we did. So you find the thread and then you start typing those in. And that way we'll just say goodbye to Randy because we won't hear from him again. He'll be just typing all the rest of the show.
How about more men and a woman?
That's good.
Three's Company would be something that would be very generic.
Come and knock on my door.
That might get flagged for copyright.
That's right, if we
No
do that
doubt.
song. Just now, even.
It
I kind
wasn't
of like-
7 seconds. I'm good.
I kind of like Salt Lake
Three
Expositor.
companions, not Three's Company. 3 companions. Oh,
3 compañeros.
3 companions. I still
So
like my
Peter-
original Scoundrels.
3 amigos.
Peter
It took.
here
Remember in the movie, 2 men and a woman.
said that the 2 missing kids from the FLDS even got a mention in Australia. Do you guys know that story that came out, the missing FLDS children?
Yeah, so
No.
that's a tough one. That's a
No.
tough one.
Wait,
So
what?
let me synopsize. So
Okay, please.
so there was a girl who went missing from the FLDS a few years back. She's now an adult, and so she's not considered a missing child anymore. Well, 2 of her younger siblings now have gone missing, and they believe that the older sister either helped these 2 younger kids escape or is housing them somehow. And their mother, who has since left the FLDS, is looking for them. And so it's a little bit of a dilemma because, do you want those kids to be returned to the FLDS, or do you want them to be returned to their mother, which is where they ran away from? Or do you want them to stay with their sister, who has also left the FLDS, and her mother. You know, according to the law, what should happen is that those two kids should be returned to the custodial parent. But I feel like it's a little bit of a dilemma, because obviously those kids left their mom's house for a reason. So anyway,
Where
When
did it
did this
occur,
happen?
Megan?
Is this recent?
yeah, this is just within the last couple of days. I'll
Yeah,
have to look up
baby
the
Wow.
article to be accurate about it.
Wow.
It's like a Jerry Springer episode of Connections.
Right, but a
Yeah.
lot of times when people leave the parent who's left the fundamental religion, sometimes they go back to the religious group. And so to
Exactly.
me, I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with anything the mother did wrong necessarily. It's just like, you
Yeah.
know, I hate to use the word brainwashing, but that's kind of what it is
Yeah.
really deep for the kids.
Oh, yeah.
Because even like
Raising
the
it.
ones who didn't go to the Yearning for Zion, like a lot of
Yeah.
those kids, you know, or he got kicked out of the Yearning for Zion or whatever, they try to go back to that lifestyle because it's what's familiar. And even if it's not maybe what's best for them, that's kind of scary.
Right.
And if you follow Jaden Jeffs and Brielle Decker, Jaden was his son and Brielle was his ex-wife. They definitely separate parents from children and give the kid a higher calling, or leave the child home because they're not worthy, and they separate those families. So either way, they're going to be in control of the system, because if you go back to your family that's believing, they're going to do what that prophet says regardless. I mean,
Yeah.
it is like Kool-Aid 101 in those groups. So
Yeah.
I
So
have that's hard situation to say who's the better person. I think that kid should, or the woman should be able to get a new name and a new social and disappear. That's how
yeah.
they leave. That's how
So
they leave.
here's the article. It says 2 teenagers with ties to the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were reported missing Sunday, and their mother believes they are in hiding. Alan Lorand Fisher, 13, and Rachel Lorraine Fisher, 15, may be traveling in a gray Honda or Hyundai sedan with Utah plates, according to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. Their mother, Elizabeth Roundy, has full custody of the kids and left for a Bible study Sunday evening. When she returned home, they were gone from their Jefferson County property. The Fisher's sister, Elintra D. Fisher, was reported missing in January 2023 from the same home. She is now 18 and was never located. Roundy believes the mother believes Elintra may have been involved in the disappearance of Alan and Rachel. Roundy also suspects her ex-husband, Nephi Fisher, knows where the children are. The teenagers previously lived in Trenton, Utah, and may have returned, although Fisher believes adults in the FLDS church are hiding them, and they could be anywhere. Alan is 5'9", weighs around 135 pounds, and has longer sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. Rachel is 5'5", weighs 135, and has brown hair and blue eyes. Anyone with information on where the teenagers could be is asked to call the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office.
Wow.
That's so scary because, okay, so I interviewed Brielle like 10 years ago. She had just left the FLDS like 4 years ago when she started really telling her story, and now she's like has a platform and tells it. And she describes these houses of hiding and how those are. You are basically trafficked and locked in a room. It's not like, oh, we're protecting these younger. No, like there is no freedom, no choice, especially within the FLDS. And that's what's kind of creepy, that they're like our sister religion. And now Mormondom has like said, oh, well, we kind of did hide that John Taylor thing that proved all you guys right. I'm like, why? Like, you should
Well-
just back away from it. But the scary thing is the amount of control and also the leverage, because imagine having 10 kids, and to protect your 9, you're going to let your husband do whatever he wants to the 1, because you're already a victim. You're a 3rd or 4th, 5th wife, and you have no say, and the prophet has told you this is what must be done. Now, the shocking part is I've never heard of the FLDS in Australia, so that's new information.
The other thing that's
Shall-
kind of scary is Warren Jeff's recent prophecy that he published from jail basically calls for the unaliving of children. And so they believe these kids might be in grave danger
What?
because of the recent
Well,
revelation from Warren Jeff.
when we were
Why?
at Thrive, that couple that does the channel on polygamy, can't remember their names, said that Warren basically has told the people to leave the community and
Yeah.
to unalive themselves for the second coming.
Yep.
Growing up in polygamy, Sam and Melissa.
Yep.
Sam and Melissa, thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Oh.
I actually have this new revelation here because I'm getting ready to do an episode about it.
Oh, they were in Idaho.
Mhm.
Okay.
But there's so basically, I mean, the revelation is like 14 pages long. It's like your worst nightmare of Doctrine and Covenants chapter, but there's a couple of parts that are really important. One is that basically it says less than 5.5 years from today is when Jesus is going to come. So we have another date, which is great.
Oh,
Of course they say that.
You know,
Stock up.
so, get ready. But then the next thing it says they will prepare themselves and their children to either be translated or celestially resurrected. And the implication is that translated people have to die, essentially. It goes on to say, because translated people must die, that is called in the scriptures the twinkling of an eye time period. More clearly, Godhead twinkling of the eye time period. Like, this is all nonsense, but this is what this is the revelation he published. The time period Jesus Christ's physical body lay in the grave before he was resurrected, approximately 2.5 days to 3 days in the grave, and then resurrected pure. So they're basically saying that all the believers need to be translated, which means they need to die and lay in the grave for 2.5 days, and then they'll be resurrected.
Sounds like a
and it
Jim
says-
Jones kind of thing.
Yeah, it says multiple times, translated people must die.
So
Dude,
this is given August 8th, 2022, right?
Yeah, right.
That was
There's
the last
been a thousand of these kinds of people. Like, these people don't look and be like, oh, I'm gonna be the one that was right, and like Lori was wrong, and that guy was wrong, and that guy was wrong. And I'm gonna be the right one. But
Yeah.
obviously that's just reason. I don't think that way.
So February of 2028 is when we're expecting all of this to really go down.
This is my
Yes,
piss
it
off.
has to be before the Olympics, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Because remember the 2002 Olympics, they were all like, thinking Christ was coming, and they before
Right.
the
Oh,
Olympics,
yeah,
so, the
yeah.
Olympics came in
When they all moved to
29 or
Israel.
whatever.
Yeah, but
Thank
he
you.
said,
Yeah.
he said 5.5 years from the date of this revelation, and the date of the revelation was August of 22.
August
Here's
8th, 2022.
connection to that is the mainstream church is propagating this Jesus is coming bullshit. And I'm like, babe, he's not coming. He is absolutely not coming. Okay? Unless you're in bed with him and going, ooh, but not coming.
That kind of
Like,
joke.
they keep on putting this like fish out. Like, I remember Y2K. Anyone old enough to remember Y2K? I was in
Yeah.
Vegas,
Yes.
but I was young enough that all my friends I was still friends with, I was still very much involved in my Utah community. They were freaking the fuck out. They were cashing out. Like, Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. I had friends in my neighborhood's dads giving people revelation like Chad Daybell style. Like it was weird as weird. And then I remember working in Vegas on the Strip. Y2K happened. I had a Tony fucking Curtis moment with Tony Curtis. Like literally it was balls to walls crazy. We all woke up the next day and everyone was very disappointed that the world didn't end, mind you, in Utah.
Those that stop making their credit card payments and house payments. There's a lot of people that stop making payments.
I stopped paying tithing. Oh, that may have been a bad move.
And I can see some nutcase when this revelation is supposed to come to pass of Warren Jeffs.
Warren Jeffs.
I can see some nutcase going in and trying to annihilate everybody on his behalf to make it, to make it come to pass.
Well,
So
it's
that's
also
really
just,
scary.
it's a really harmful mentality as well. Like if you believe that the world is really going to end in 5.5 years, then what matters? And that's Daybell mentality right there. I believe that they never thought that they were going to get caught. I believe they never thought anybody was going to ever know the kids were missing because the world was supposed to end on July 20th, so
For sure.
when that's the case, you can just get away with anything, which incidentally, I just wanted to make a comment about Debbie's comment about Jesus coming. One of my favorite recommendations for our name was Behind the Green Apron.
I like that. Okay, that's the top one.
No, I can't.
That is actually really good because that is like
I think that one just won.
Okay, we'll do that one.
I think I was the old,
That's awesome.
I think
forgot
that
about
And then
that
one.
the logo is your faces peeking out from behind the green, temple apron.
Okay, Randy's going to work on that logo.
Doesn't
Yeah,
really
I've
have
got
broad
the logo
appeal
made,
though.
but will,
I
Thoughts
think
from
that's
you?
the winner. That to me is the winner.
That is the winner.
It says
That's
it
the
all
winner.
without saying too much. And if you know,
it's
you
very
know.
niche though.
It's
Yeah,
very
Yeah,
niche.
it's really
It does
niche.
not
I mean,
have
like,
it does not have broad appeal. That's why I said it was a joke.
But
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
good one.
But you
Behind
could do
the
Adam,
veil, maybe.
Adam and Steve plus Eve.
So I've posted the interviews we did. Here's the Debbie Donovan interview. If you look in the chat, I did it. Here's the Midlife Revolution with Megan Connor. Here's Randy's show, Filling Empty with Randy Watts.
I've also always wanted to
Tim's
just call
Teapot.
it Satan's
Tim's
Apron.
Oh my goodness.
Satan's
Because
apron's better name.
Satan's the one who told him to put the apron on. So literally you're wearing Satan's apron.
That's correct. That is
Satan's
correct.
plan is a good name. Satan's plan.
Yeah.
No, I think behind the green
Well, it'll be a symbol of our power and priesthoods, Megan.
That's right. That's right. Susie's asking, what's a green apron? Well, that's a rabbit hole for another time. But I will just briefly say that in the LDS temple, there are certain clothes that you have to wear as part of the temple ceremony. And one of them is a green apron that has fig leaves embroidered on it
to cover your nakedness.
To cover your nakedness, yeah.
I'm typing it in the chat.
I mean, one option could be to keep along the same theme is just behind the veil. Because it's got the twofold meaning of behind the veil that women would wear in the temple, but it's also behind the veil when you go through.
There's already a podcast called Behind the Veil, though.
Yeah,
there is.
There is a podcast.
Yeah.
She's
Try
right.
one more time from Megan what the password is when you are in the church parking lot.
Pioneer 47.
Pioneer 47 with a capital P and an exclamation mark. If anyone needs free Wi-Fi at any time, or if you're committing a crime and you need to connect to your Google phone, feel free to use the church parking lot.
Exclamation mark at the end.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Gene, I was going to say, you have Tuesdays with Tim. I think you need to get Sundays with Satan going.
You're great, Trevor. You're right on roll tonight. Oh my goodness.
That could be the subtext to the Behind the Green Apron is Sundays with Satan.
Well,
Oh my
okay,
goodness.
for the record, just for genealogy's sake, in the old Salt Lake City live endowment, when Satan would appear, he would be wearing a black apron with Masonic
No,
symbols on it.
no. Blue
That's
apron. A
Blue.
blue apron.
My
With
mother
the,
told me to come wrong.
Sure looked black to me though.
no, it was black writing. Black, a blue apron with the two pillars and the checkerboard.
Who knows Satan better,
Than
Tim or
Tim.
Deb?
Tim is as old as Satan. What's Satan's other name? Old.
Old Yeller.
No. There's a name like
Beelzebub.
Old Sparky or something. I don't know what it is.
Diesel
Old Scratch.
Old
That's what the
Scratch.
Old
prophets, the
Scratch.
prophets used to call him Old Scratch.
Yes,
Old
they
Scratch.
did. Oh my God, bringing it back.
A cute nickname for the devil.
Oh my
Oh.
gosh,
Oh.
that's the real deal right there.
Wow. Wow.
Hey.
He's got names.
Oh, doggy.
There's the okay. There's the answer to your question.
Mm.
I haven't seen one of those
Embroidery.
for a long time.
It's gonna be
Here I
strip
am
dead.
behind the green apron.
Oh,
Same.
I'm
I've only
having a
seen
panic
one.
attack.
I never
I
went
remember
to
being
Texas.
cool that I had the one that didn't tie, it hooked. Remember when they upgraded the apron where it hooked
Yep.
and you didn't have to put the bow in the back of your neck? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I'm
you
gonna
were
bounce you
hooker.
guys. You have a good one.
You take care, Judy.
Dave,
Be safe.
good to see you.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye, Dave.
I burned mine.
I never owned one. I just went one time and rented it. So
And
Can I
this
say
was-
something about that? Isn't it funny how the wealthiest one of the wealthiest organizations in the world, and they spend $11 to $50 million on a temple, and you go and give of yourself, your service, your time, and you have to pay rent to rent
That's right.
that outfit.
$3.45 to rent the set of clothes.
I mean, are
Don't
you
ever come
freaking
back in.
kidding me?
Yeah, they
Do they
couldn't
take
cover
a
that. That would have
deposit?
broken them.
It's
that's
funny
how
to
they
see
make
a cash. It was funny to see a cash register in the temple. It was like, wait a minute, what did Jesus say about the money changers?
Bust out the whip. Start whipping them.
Right.
And why do they
do they
charge
take a
the adults
deposit?
for renting the endowment for the ceremony, for the endowment ceremony, but they don't charge the kids for doing baptisms? But it's the same thing. They still have to wash all those clothes and towels.
Exactly.
Even Mormons would think charging kids money is wrong, but
And they can, and they should let us deduct it from our tithing anyway.
but do they take something? Could you theoretically just take the clothes you rent and just keep them? Like, do they know?
No, so
I
you,
guess you
so
could.
you go and, yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess you could, yeah.
Now,
And into
I've
the
never
coffee
been a
fund.
temple worker, but did temple workers get to eat in the cafeteria for free, but members
Oh,
who go there for
No,
free
they have to
No, you still have to pay.
pay. Stuff
What?
to pay.
Oh my God.
But it's a good price. for
Of
them.
course. Of course.
Yeah, it's
they
kind of
do.
like when you rent bowling shoes. You could ostensibly wear the bowling shoes out and just not return them. You could do the same thing with the temple clothes. You could just go back in your dressing room and stuff them in your suitcase or whatever.
They take your shoes. And
God forgive you.
Well, that's true. So you just wear a really crappy pair of shoes.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've seen it done. I've seen it done.
not that I've done that. I'm just
I've
saying
seen
like
it done.
people could do it.
Shelley
Seen it
was
done.
never worthy enough to do the endowment ceremony, I think. So maybe we should do a show where Tim does the endowment ceremony for Shelley.
Me too. I never did.
I don't
either.
have any
I
temple
quit
clothes.
before.
Oh, I could be the officiator,
Yeah.
and I dress all in
No.
black.
What is
Yeah.
wanted?
Here's the after show that once we turn the podcast off is
This-
everything that's said in the temple that could be taken out of context and be construed as sexual.
That's Satan's apron that he wears. in the
Satan's
temple.
apron.
It's Satan's
Oh,
apron.
yeah.
Except it's
Yep.
blue and what? Yeah, okay. Anyway,
Say that again, Megan.
I said for the after show, it's going to be everything, all of the phrases from the endowment ceremony that could be taken out of context and construed as sexual.
What is wanted?
Bow your head and
Right.
say
Did you
Right.
yes.
don't
Right
see
now.
Fellow,
you don't
yep.
see the
Use
statue in
words
the old
blind out.
downtown
all right,
City
all right,
Temple?
all right. Okay, hang on. I got a story. There was a guy who was upset
What is that?
about Rebecca talking about the garment. I had this conversation on Facebook with him, and he said, "If you don't like it, you don't have to wear the garment and all this stuff." And I quoted from the temple ceremony that you agree to wear it day and night, and the only chance you have to leave the ceremony is at the beginning
Yep.
when they said, if
Before they
anybody
tell
wants to
you.
leave, before they tell you anything. And I said, in a contract, both parties know what's going to happen. There's no informed consent. He kept trying to argue with me that there was, and I said, this is what it says. Bow your head and say yes. There's no chance to say no, because once you've committed to it, there's no opportunity to leave after that.
It'd be
Yep.
like
And
the doctor
that's,
saying, "We need to do surgery on you," and you say,
yeah,
"Well, what is it?" I can't tell you. You have to
tell
agree
you,
before we
yeah.
do the surgery.
Yeah.
And,
You
and
know,
I shut him down really fast. But go back and look at the conversation between me and this idiot Mormon in Orange County, California. Anyway, I finally shut him
How
down.
dare you put idiot and Mormon in the same sentence?
Imbecile? Imbecilic Mormon?
you know
Well,
what's
think
really
about
funny about
For anything, like if a guy asked you to go to a back alley and meet him for dinner, you'd be like, and why? Can't we meet at a public restaurant?
Exactly.
Just like you would be like, this is my problem with Mormonism is because it creates victims because you are not given informed consent, so you don't learn how to consent to other
That's
situations that
correct.
normal adults understand. And I didn't understand that growing up in Utah with a bunch of Mormons who didn't understand this. And then I got out into the world and they were like, bullshit, I wouldn't put up with that. And I'm like, you can say that? Why would it was such a foreign concept in
That's by default.
Vegas, especially in Vegas, like informed consent, everything is about like, yeah, you want to gamble, you gamble. You want to smoke, you smoke. You want, what do you want? But it's consent because there's a contract of you do this, we do that.
Right.
And in Utah, I I didn't understand that, and I felt so cheated because I felt like I looked at the world and they had consent or freedom, and I was just programmed to do what I was told or follow the path or trust the plan.
We all were. Yeah.
Stay in
We
the
all were
boat.
told that to trust the prophet, trust your leaders.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Some just didn't listen.
Sorry, I vented.
any-
I vented.
When the prophet speaks, the thinking has been done.
right.
I
But in
used to
particular,
wonder why people. I used to wonder why people didn't think for themselves when I was thinking for myself. Why people just follow their bullshit. And there's something wrong with this all my life.
Well,
Anyway.
Tim, if you were Mormon, you still weren't thinking. You just had the thought that you were. Just like we think
That's
we
true.
have agency in the
Okay.
world.
It's all
All
relative.
right.
gaslighting
So what
because you get to take a temple
Yeah.
prep class, right? And then you go and you learn in your temple prep class nothing about what you're going to experience in the temple, for example.
Exactly.
So that's
Nothing.
what's one
Exactly.
of non-informed consent about anything. How many of you had informed consent about when you got baptized? If you got baptized at 8, how many of you
No.
like knew you were walking onto a
Okay.
covenant path? Came along later after years of being a member, like all that whole like you were promising all these things when you decided to get baptized, right?
When did
Right.
any of
Part
us
of it.
agree that the Book of Mormon, the Bible, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price were the standard works, the scriptures of the church? When did we ever vote on it? Never.
Right. You repeated what you heard around you, what everybody expected you to say, what you heard every Sunday.
Yeah.
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 I had an epiphany. Megan, it's about your name behind the green apron.
Yes.
Do you know what behind the green door is?
I know that.
I know
That
that
just
one.
makes it that much better.
Exactly.
and
That's what
Alfred
I'm
Hitchcock
saying.
What
movies.
you gonna do? You should.
It just dawned on me that it's
Triple
a
It's
play
like
on
entendre.
that. I love
Triple
that.
it's
contrast,
like
deep
I am
throat.
curious yellow. I am
Right.
curious yellow behind the green door. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, deep
One of the
throat. That should be the
classics.
podcast. It's the same thing, right?
I
Tell
feel
us.
like this is like some deep like history, and I'm trying to like tax my brain, but like, what's behind the green door, Megan? What is it? What is
Google
that?
that. Google that sucker.
There's Coke Zero behind the green door.
It was
Just
like
kidding.
a porno in the
No,
70s.
no, not Jesus.
Yeah,
Behind the green door was a porn,
yeah,
X-rated movie.
and
Yeah, in the
it's
70s.
very boring and very vanilla now compared to
Yeah.
What else is out
it's
there?
like just like
Yeah,
I am
it's not real
curious
true.
yellow. When I watched that, I'm going, what? What's the deal? You know, and I
Everybody
watched
isn't
behind
related in it. Is that what you mean? And like now it's all like mom and son and.
It's almost like what's behind the green screen. You remember, like, okay, so like you can create anything on a green screen. Anything. Most Hollywood movies, every news, like the green screen is this magical thing that can make people react or feel engaged or show things. And I can go, hey, this is here and there. And the green screen, I think, has evolved with technology. It used to be the green apron, but I feel like it's now the green screen.
You know, my favorite thing about the green screen in recent years is that one day Queen Elizabeth decided to wear a green dress to an outing, and the internet just had a field day projecting different patterns onto her green dress like it was a green screen.
yes,
It was a great day. It was a great day.
So
Well,
behind
she
the
did wear a lime green dress to the Prince Harry Meghan Markle wedding, which was very
Yep.
bright and apropos different from her norm. So I don't know what she always signaled. That woman was a signaler with everything.
Wasn't Prince Harry a character in Behind the Green Door?
you know, I grew up in Mesa,
I
Arizona.
think there was a redhead, but I don't think it was him.
Especially in the name. In the 70s, you know.
Randy grew up
man.
in Mesa, Arizona, where they didn't have sex.
No, this is surprising. We had the Mesa Theater. It was called the New Mesa Theater because it was new, but this is 100 years ago. And it was the only theater in town, and they would always have double features, so you could go see two movies. I Am Curious Yellow shows up on the marquee, and they ran this what was supposed to be triple X rated movie. And I was in high school, and my parents said that they were going to go to the Mesa Theater and watch I Am Curious Yellow. And I'm like, that's like X rated, right? And they're like, yeah, we just want to see what it's all about. And my parents were totally TBM. I mean, they were true believing Mormons. And
They're
they
just
went.
going to do research.
They went. They
What?
went
What?
to see I Am Curious Yellow.
Oh my
So
god.
at that movie, and everyone was blown away that in the little Mormon town of Mesa, they brought in I Am Curious Yellow. But yeah,
They paired it with the Yellow Submarine, right?
well,
From the Beatles
so to
movie.
speak.
Followed by Clockwork Orange, followed by Eyes Wide Shut.
Orange would have been good.
Well, Clockwork Orange, yeah, that was a bizarro.
Clockwork
That
Orange
reminds
is
me
one
of
of
a
the
joke
best
that
movies ever made.
I have to, as we're coming close to the close, I came
Yeah.
up with a joke that I sent to Megan and Randy already. And I
Uh-oh.
sent to Ganesh Chirian. Ganesh Chirian has come out with his new book, and we're going to have Ganesh on in a little while on our show. This is Smith. Can anybody read that?
Wait,
Way
Joseph,
too small.
I'm
I
old.
can't
and
read it without Ganesh's accent.
Mormonism.
Yeah, we should get Peter Higgs on real quick.
Does it say "Good day, mate" at the end?
Architect of Mormonism, a topical biography.
A topical
That's
biography.
So we're going to have Ganesh on, and we're going to talk about one of the topics.
I love it.
I'm gonna make
But here's
videos.
speaking of Mesa's theater, my joke was, when I was young, I thought adult school was where I was finally going to learn about sex.
Probably won't want to become a stand-up comedian.
No. My delivery's not there, but I'm going to write for Ganesh.
I have a good nature
Oh,
story as a
because I forgot saying I grew up Mormon. I was so sheltered that I thought. So yes, Randy.
Did you live in Mesa, Deb?
Yes, I did with my ex-husband. That's where we met. And we were in this like very poor ward in Mesa, Arizona. We just had a starter home. And this is back when they tried to reintroduce road shows, and we were in the poorest ward. And all these other stakes had more money besides our neighborhood or our ward. And we just had a hodgepodge of kids. I mean, they were from everywhere. It was beautiful. And not a lot of them active. We had to pull them together. And my ex-husband is actually a musician and a songwriter. And we got for our, like, they wanted to recreate, you know how road shows are, they create a theme. They created the theme of like musicals, and we got assigned the Music Man. And so we didn't want to recreate the old Music Man. We recreated it as boys band, and he wrote all these songs to this. And these kids came up and they were like using like hangers with like foam, like to make it look like they were Backstreet Boys. These kids had so much creativity. It was like the best road show. And I'm going to say, for the record, us on a zero budget road show with a bunch of probably inactive, semi-active kids. These kids showed up and performed. It was like and I still have a CD of like all the songs they did, because you do like clippets of the parody of the Music Man. And I will say that was probably my best experience in Mormonism, and being in Mesa, Arizona, was getting to know those kids. And like my ex-husband's like super fun, like calling, because that's what he was called to do, like to do music, and them saying, make it cool. And you know what? At the end of the day, all those kids in that stake were so cool because they were so funny and so took on those parts,
That
because they
starts
were like,
with C. That
it was
rhymes
like
with C, and
Backstreet
that
Boys,
stands for
like
cool.
Backstreet back, all right, like we kind of, it was the 90s. We ran with it. It was 2000. The boys
That's great. Sounds like fun.
The 90s were crazy.
we all miss, like,
Do you remember where that poor ward was? Because I grew up and our ward was incredibly poor in Mesa. Was it on 10th Avenue? The old Mesa.
I could probably text my ex-husband now and send you the address. I don't remember the address.
I just wondering what part of town.
No, we were in, well, because he was like, he had graduated from college, was starting his career, and he bought this house, because they had few incentives for first time, and it was affordable. Like, it was a $80,000 house, and he had a bunch of college roommates. And so back in the day, it was a cool thing to own a house at that age, even in a poor neighborhood. If you were a college kid, you didn't care.
Yeah, it's lame now to own a house.
Right.
Only losers own houses.
We all wish to buy a house. Losers pay $2,000 a month for a shotgun apartment. You can see how deep that dives. It's sucky. So anyway, I'll end with that story. I have to go to bed because I have to get up at 4 a.m. and I'm delirious. Right. And that's
it's about
why
time we end the show anyway. And so, but we'll
time to end it. Good night, everybody.
For the after show can.
Okay.
So
Thanks for all the participants.
yeah, thanks for everybody coming.
Thanks for
And
being here,
commenting.
everybody.
Yeah, I was I'll say things later. Have a great rest of 2025. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah.
I have
See
to
you
go
guys
to bed.
next week.